So, I've been brainstorming for a while now for what my next video is gonna be. After stressing it out, I didn't really thought of anything. But I found a topic online that piqued my interest. Although some of you guys might know about this topic, because this topic is kinda very old. But I'll do my best to entertain you guys, and who knows, you might learn a thing or two. So, with that said, hello and kumusta? This is the Artsi, and in this video, I'm gonna talk about
Resident Evil
4. But before, how it became great. Some of you may be thinking, wow, this guy would not shut up about Resident Evil, especially 4. Well, yeah, that's because Resident Evil 4 is my favorite game of all time. So, shut the f*** up. I'm kidding. Maybe just a bit. Anyway, Resident Evil 4 has captured the hearts of many weird and sometimes depressing people over the years, including me, of course. And that's one of the reasons why the game is so great. Not just because of its gameplay, characters, and environment, but the way the game just hit me in my depressing weird soul. Something about the game just really resonated with me. And I know I'm not the only one. It was fun, satisfying, thrilling, and the game made me use 100% of my brain capacity. And for me, that's a miracle. I should know because I'm Asian and I'm somewhat a disgrace to the Asian community. Well, anyway, Shinji Mikami and his team really did meticulously plan the whole game out before its release. And the result of that is the 2005 game Resident Evil 4. Now, first off, I'm not gonna talk about Shinji Mikami on why he didn't want Resident Evil 4 to be ported or be released with the PS2 console. I do not know the whole story of that time, and if you guys would explain it to me and my dumb brain in the comment section down below, I would really appreciate that. Now that's out of the way, what I wanna talk about is something else. We're diving into that unfinished portion of the game, and what I meant by that is by exploring the game ideas that was supposed to be in the final product but was tossed away in the attic. We're diving not in Resident Evil 4, but diving into Resident Evil 3.5. Now before I explain this, Resident Evil 3.5 is the scrap version of Resident Evil 4. I did some digging and found some information about the game. Whether if it's a wiki, some YouTube videos, or some discussion topics from Reddit, even though I researched the version of this game, I'm pretty sure I'm still missing some pieces here and there. Maybe it's not gonna be a 100% accuracy, but I'll try my best to explain and entertain you guys at the same time with the research materials that I have found. So, let's get on with the video. Now, it's kinda ironic that Resident Evil 4 had 4 failed attempts before getting into the final product. But some of those products ended up being used as a mechanic in the game for some of the Resident Evil games. And some of those failed attempts were the reason why we got some of the games we know and love. And the first one I'm gonna talk about are the how it became to be. Resident Evil 4 was released in 2005 on the GameCube. But the game was hinted back then in early December 1999. So imagine if they hinted this game in 1999 and was being developed before then. This took like almost a decade to make, and games back then isn't what it is compared today. Now I don't mean the quality of the games, but how they are marketed, being developed, how much budget they have. Technology wasn't that advanced back then, everything. Now that's commitment. Now why am I saying to all of this to you guys? Because Devil May Cry was released first before Resident Evil 4. It was released in 2001 on the PlayStation 2. According to Hideki Kamiya-san and some other sources, the story was about two brothers, Tony Redgrave, the supposedly protagonist of the game, and his twin brother Paul Redgrave, which are the sons of Oswald E. Spencer, one of the founder of the Umbrella Pharmaceutical Corporation, who have also became superhuman because of the
Progenitor.
virus. Sounds familiar, right? The first Devil May Cry game was directed by Hideki Kamiya-san and Shinji Mikami-san as a producer at the time of its early development. Now we all know what Devil May Cry is and how the gameplay is. Super fast, killing demons left and right, some beautiful characters, and the most important of all is being stylish in the game. Because that's what matters in this franchise. Of course, we're gonna talk about how it got rejected. Shinji Mikami-san simply said it strayed too far from its formula. That's about it. The game was originally pitched as a supernatural horror game with some JRPG elements. Maybe the reason why they pitched this idea was because they wanna honor Tokoro Fujiwara-san and his work Sweet Home. If it is, respect. They wanted the game to be cool, or at least that was the direction they were going for. But Shinji Mikami-san thought that it might not be a survival horror game anymore. Even the people working on the project felt the same way. Well, even though the idea got rejected, the idea of coolness in the game was still implemented on the final version and the games that was released on future installments. An example of that is Leon S. Kennedy, from being a plain generic character now transformed into a cheesy but one of the coolest characters in the game and a heartthrob for female players. And maybe even men. But as you guys can see, the gameplay will not work. And maybe if they continue that idea, maybe the Resident Evil we know now would not exist. So they never continued that idea. Some got implemented, but not all of it. But since the premise is too good to throw away, they just made it into another game. And that's how Devil May Cry was born. I would love to talk more about the game, but this isn't a How Devil May Cry was born video. Ooh, that sounds good. I'll write that down. There were a lot of enemy designs that was scrapped in this version. Some of them stayed and got redesigned. Some of them got redesigned for the DMC game. And some of them never got to light. Personally, I can see why they scrapped some of these enemies. I mean, they're cool and all, but at the same time, it feels overused. But then again, it was a long time ago, so it wasn't used much back then. I guess it just felt generic for me because it's been years and many games have used it so many times. But there is one enemy that I find very interesting, and that's the Black Fog enemy. In this version, following the events from Resident Evil 2, Leon S. Kennedy, now an elite soldier working in the Anti-Umbrella Pursuit and Investigation team, where instead of rescuing the president's daughter, Ashley, Leon and his team is sent to raid the castle of Oswald E. Spencer, where Umbrella HQ is located. But while they were raiding the castle, they encountered a black fog in the area. After they encountered the black fog, Leon's team got wiped out, leaving Leon S. Kennedy the sole survivor in the castle. And now he must do his job all alone while being chased by a black fog, which was the design for the Ouroboros from Resident Evil 5. Oswald E. Spencer wanted immortality, so he did some experiments like cloning himself, and there's also this mysterious girl in the lab and has a companion which is a BOW dog. BOW meaning bioorganic weapon. I am guessing that's supposed to be Ashley in this version of the game. This was called the Castle/Fog version of the game. Some sources also said that for the inspiration for this version was because of Silent Hill and their success, and they wanted to fight Silent Hill with this version of the game. Sadly though, that didn't happen. Yasuhisa Kawamura-san, who was a writer for the OG Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, and the one responsible for creating the Mercenaries Operation Mad Jackal. I haven't played that game. And Noboru Sugimura-san, may he rest in peace, who worked on various television series and video games, especially some of the scenarios from Resident Evil 2, Code Veronica, and even a major part in the Dino Crisis series. This guy did a lot of work. They both also wrote the story and the theme for the stylish version of the game. They both added a lot of ideas for Resident Evil 4, but most of those ideas were rejected. Now, it is kinda sad that they were rejected, but in doing so, those ideas that were rejected resulted in other games getting created and making a name for themselves. And you can see that with the Devil May Cry games. But there's another game that was affected by this, and maybe if it hadn't got that idea or the script written by Noboru Sugimura-san, the game would have probably have not been as popular as it was back then. And the game I'm talking about is the 2005 cult classic survival horror game Haunting Ground that was released on the PlayStation 2. Now personally, I haven't played Haunting Ground. I know, I'm sorry. I'll play it in the future. I promise. Cross my heart. But I've seen some of the gameplay, and the game did have a lot of similarities to Resident Evil, and some of the story too. We'll get to there in a minute. This version used the same material in the stylish version of the game. So you can see a lot of similarities in this version and that version. The only difference here is that some of the characters were changed, especially the main protagonist of the game and the Black Fog enemy, which was the star attraction for this version of the game. They changed the main protagonist because they thought the main character being superhuman was kinda silly. But I guess punching giant boulders is a different story. Who knows? Well, anyway, besides that, Leon S. Kennedy, here in this version, is also infected, but rather than the Las Plagas that was injected into him, in this version, the Black Fog was the one that infected him. This was a cool idea, but it was very ambitious at the time. The idea wasn't rejected, but the programming team ran into difficulties while working on the enemy design. The Black Fog enemy was redesigned for the Ouroboros in Resident Evil 5. So, now imagine those tentacles wiggling non-stop for the GameCube. Now you can see why it never got into the final product. It proved too taxing for the GameCube and had trouble rendering the creature. So to resolve this problem, Yasuhisa Kawamura-san proposed an alternate arrangement for the creature. And that's to have hallucinatory side effect for Leon S. Kennedy. Poor Leon being the guinea pig again. So having hallucinatory effect for the creature, it wouldn't render the creature all the time. That's what I'm guessing, and they might have redesigned the Black Fog for the GameCube to a workable condition. But in doing so, they need to revise a lot of the story and game mechanics that was already implanted in this version. So back to the drawing board. And like I've said with the Devil May Cry game, Haunting Ground was already being made back then. But they completed the game because they gave the script that was written by Noboru Sugimura-san for the castle version of the game. Since it was too good to just throw away, they just gave it to another team that was making the game at the time. It's just cool sometimes how a rejected idea can be turned into something amazing along the lines. Now that I've said that, I really want to play Haunting Ground now. I might stream it, who knows. So, the stylish version didn't work, and the castle version didn't work. So let's go to the third idea. The third version of the game is called Hallucination / Hookman Idea. Unlike the two versions that came before this, the hallucination version doesn't really has a plot that was made to it. The hallucination was scrapped before the script was even made. But the idea was that Leon being infected here would result him in seeing hallucinations while roaming the castle, or the area he was in. Yasuhisa Kawamura-san said this best, so I'm just gonna read what he said back then with the interview. Hallucination / Hookman was merely an experiment and there was no true backstory. I wanted to make Biohazard 4, Biohazard is the original name of the game, scarier and suggested using a particular scene from the film The Lost Souls, where the main character, played by Winona Ryder, while washing her hands in the bathroom, suddenly finds herself in a derelict building with a killer on the loose. An arranged version of this idea eventually turned into Hookman. So what is the Hookman? The Hookman is like Mr. X or the Nemesis in this version of the game. The Hookman relentlessly stalks Leon all throughout the version of the game, and just like the Tyrant enemies, they are unkillable for the majority part of the game. That was the concept for this game. Other than the Hookman, there were supposed to be living dolls that attack the player every now and then, and some animated suits of armor. The armored suits was in the final version though, so fighting paranormal enemies was a fresh take at the time. Yasuhisa Kawamura-san believed that a take on a more surreal approach would reinvigorate the franchise, and like the previous version, the castle version, he thought that this take would be a good competition to Silent Hill. Shinji Mikami-san even thought that the version was scarier than ever before. Paranormal enemies are scary, and you can think a lot of ways to make the game more terrifying with these types of enemies. But personally, it doesn't feel like Resident Evil anymore. They were going for a more Silent Hill approach with the game, and I'm glad that it wasn't the case. But I still thought this was a good idea. I would even play it for sure. So everything's good, right? Shinji Mikami-san approved it. The team thought that this was a good idea, and they all agreed that it's much scarier than before. So what happened? Well, about that. Turns out that they wanted to create a system where the player encounters random enemies while he was hallucinating. The game was planned to load both the normal and hallucinatory version of each room's 3D assets simultaneously, so that switching between the two would not require more loading. The only problem is that they didn't take account the GameCube's RAM capacity, which was only a whopping 24 megabyte capacity at the time. I'm not an expert in these kinds of things, but I don't think the GameCube can handle this sort of thing. The programming team did their best, and they were able to bring one enemy per room. That's about it. Though I don't know about the living dolls and the suits of armor. Maybe they weren't as detailed as much as we thought. Who knows? So this idea never got into the final product. But again, since the idea was too good, they tried to put this on the later games of Resident Evil. And you can see that in Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8/Village. If some of you haven't played those games yet, you're missing out. Trust me. So we got one version left before the final product. Well, you can also say that the next version can be the pre-final version of the game. And surprisingly, Shinji Mikami-san hated this idea the most. It's called the zombie version. So, what's the problem with this idea? This idea was used before like several times now. That's true, but it does have one glaring problem. And that's because of the zombies. Doesn't make sense? Okay. Imagine playing the game, knowing what to expect. Every corner, every area, every room. As you progress through the story, all you can see are mostly zombies. Doesn't sound too bad, but when you've played a lot of Resident Evil games, especially at the time, it's mostly gonna be zombies. And that's more than 5 years of playing different games of Resident Evil. Having the same basic enemy each game is gonna get boring for sure. The game still sold well though. As of now, each of those games sold millions of copies. But that's over time. Back then, it sold well, yes, but not at the number like the first Resident Evil game or what they expected. You can see that there is a steady decline. It's not much, but you can see it. That's why they really wanted to reinvigorate the series with this game. And also the reason why Shinji Mikami-san doesn't like this version very much anymore. Most of the team also agree with this, that repetition and being careful, not exploring anything you can think of, is a bad idea and bad for business. Don't believe me? Just look at the Marvel movies. They aren't bad, but it isn't what it used to be. So they had a clever idea. It's still gonna be zombies, but at the same time, it's gonna be different. The enemies are gonna be called the Dabamen, meaning pack horse in Japanese. Actually, I don't know if this was Japanese, so just ignore that. Dabamen are now later recycled as Ganados, the final product enemies for Resident Evil 4, and the enemies I love the most. And we all know what happens after that. I really had a fun time making this video. It took me a while, researching every bits of information I can find. I thought it was gonna be boring, not gonna lie. But surprisingly, I liked it better than I thought. And I think I'll do this history gaming video again in the future. Not so soon though. If you guys wanna see me live, go watch me on Twitch. I update my schedule regularly. I play tons of games that I take interest in, from horror games to Souls-like games, to FPS, to rage games, to survival games, to RTS games, and so much more. As long as it's interesting and fun to play, I'll play it for sure. If you guys didn't know, I have another YouTube channel that's all about gaming, of course, some vods from Twitch that I uploaded here and there, and some videos that I played with my friends off stream, and some edited shorts that I post daily. I also have a TikTok if some of you guys use it. Well, that's about it. Thank you for watching and see ya on the next video. Hey, psst, did you like the video? Well, if you did, how about liking the video? On top of that, you should subscribe too. Ah, by the way, if you want more videos made by me, click here on the screen. Come on, just click it. It won't hurt ya. You won't? Okay then, fine. See you later, I guess.